I'm just going to go ahead and introduce you. Thank you all for attending today's webinar. We're really excited to have Troy Chu join us. He was supposed to come to campus at the last minute. We've changed it. We're doing this as our first Zoom Tuesday night lecture. And we're hoping no matter what happens next semester, whether we're online, partially online, on campus, whatever we're doing, to continue our Tuesday night lectures. They're a really important part of our San Jose State art community. We have been bringing some amazing artists and curators and speakers the last few years, and we're going to continue doing that. So Troy is our first one who's doing this virtually on Zoom, so thank you so much for doing that. Let me just tell everybody a little bit about you. Troy's work explores the African diaspora within urban culture through oil painting, drawing, and sculpture. He's interested in language and the distinctions between high art and folk art, and he contrasts historical African culture and traditions to contemporary Black culture. In this lecture, Troy will discuss his series, Out the Mud, his relationship to hip hop, and how that informs both the current and historical aspects of his art practice. Troy earned his MFA in Fine Arts from California College of the Arts in 2018, and since then, and even before that, he has been exhibiting pretty widely across the Bay Area. Most recently, he's been artist in residence at Facebook, and he's currently a fellow at the Headlands Center for the Arts in Marin. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to all our attendees as well. We actually had Troy do some MFA studio visits yesterday, so we're excited to continue this kind of community that we've created through our Tuesday night lectures and through our galleries, for now online. So thank you, Troy.
Thanks for having me. Well, I guess, should we get started?
Let's do it.
All right. Cool. Well, I guess in general, I'm a painter, but I've been exploring sculpture, video work, all types of things. And I guess since CCA, it's just been incredible snowball effect with all the opportunities I've been able to get. But I'll start and I'll say my first slide, first slide, please. I grew up in Hawthorne, California. It's in LA. It's in, I guess we call it South Bay down here, but it's in LA. And right next to Redondo Beach and next to Compton at the same time. So you get a little bit of two worlds, but that's me as a baby and also as a kid. But also I grew up on 62nd in Vermont with my grandma, and that was a much different area. But next slide, please. And then school started as a kid. It was, I guess I was a very happy kid, as you can see in that photo. But I found these old journals that we used to have for class. And I guess looking back, this is like the first few drawings that I did as a kid. And I don't know if you guys can read it, but I'll read one of them. This journal entry is from 2000. Yeah, I guess 20 years ago. Wow. We had a water fight. I went to the beach and I went to the, I think it was supposed to be park. I went to karate class. It was supposed to be karate. I went to Toys R Us. And then that's a photo of me, or a drawing of me with crayon in karate. I guess I was orange belt at the time. I'm not gonna read the other one, but that was me in some water. Next slide, please. And then middle school, I guess this is when I started to do even more art that I didn't really consider art. It just was me designing a shirt. And I also was getting into music more. So in hip hop culture, there's always been well, back in the 90s, I would say it was a very fashionable trend to get airbrush shirts. And for one Christmas, I believe my mom got me an airbrush machine, and I started making shirts. And I was just trying to hustle at the time, but looking back, also I was doing art. Next slide, please. And then got to high school. I guess one thing that I didn't say within all of my earlier grades, we didn't really have art classes, or there was no way for me to really get training in art, any technical skill. And in high school, the same thing was happening, but we had pockets of art that we were able to do, like this picture of like the Kanye West album cover. It was a geometry enlargement class, enlargement project, and we had to make something 3 times the size that it was. So I did a Kanye West album. And then the photo below is Halloween. I'm the apple right there next to the hot dog. But I'm just trying to show like I was pretty creative, but didn't have the classes or any way to really figure out what art was. Next slide, please. And then my senior year came and I finally got one art class. It was simple drawing class, but that's where I did one of my first paintings. These really have nothing to do with my current work. Maybe a few of them do, but it was kind of just me doing the projects that we had to do for class. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then graduated from high school, went to UC Merced. Then I started doing tattoos. That was my new hustle. But yeah, my mom got me a tattoo machine again for Christmas. And same day, I did my first tattoo on my friend. It's the one in the top right corner with the bow. And these others are just ones I did throughout my first few years at UC Merced. Still just exploring art. UC Merced did not have an art major when I was there, so another school that I did not get to study or learn more about art, but I was still doing things that were related to art. Next slide, please. Yeah, these were paintings that I actually started while in undergrad, and it was just me trying to teach myself how to do it. And then I got one art class there, which was one art class that was painting from life. The other art classes that I took were like architecture classes and things that just satisfied the art minor that I got there. My major was psychology. But yeah, looking at these works, I can see where my thought process was starting to go, like hip hop related items, still lifes, and portraits. And yeah, this was work that I applied to grad school with the first time that I applied, and not so successful. They said that they couldn't really see my identity, and I understand that too, because there was a lot of stuff that did not have anything to do with me. It was just a cool drawing that I did. Next slide, please. And then I graduated, and then I started experimenting much more, like trying to figure out what I was doing with this art stuff and how to do it in general. But if you could play the clip, this clip is a animation I tried to do or started once I graduated.
Man, you better not mess my shit up, dog.
Bro, chill. You know I got you. You can't even talk. Came up in here looking like the real King Kunta.
You starting to sound like my mama.
Yeah, it was not finished because it took so long to make, but I thought it was just a good thing to show that I was experimenting a lot and trying to figure out what I was doing artistically. Next slide, please. And then I started to get, I feel like, well, I didn't include this, but, or maybe I did, it might be the next slide, but I went to a Vipassana, which is like a 10-day meditation thing. And I kind of was able to understand what I wanted to do and started to make works that were directly related to hip hop or Black culture. And yeah, some of these images are, one or two is from before and the rest are from after. But next slide, please. And then I finally got into grad school. And this was my first year at CCA. It was doing still a lot more exploring, trying to figure out what I was doing with Black culture and hip hop items and things. So these paintings, some of them got painted over, and just because I didn't know where I was going with it. But the one on the left is part of a triptych that I did, and it was all the items that people died with, or Black people died with, from police brutality, and hanging from nooses, hanging from willow trees. And yeah, just starting to think more about every little detail, I feel like. And then I started to make sculptures. These are like my first two sculptures. I made a set of grills in the top right corner, and then some mini 40 bottles. They look large because I took the picture pretty close, but they're probably about 2 inches tall. And I was just playing with the idea of cuteness versus real life. People are usually judgmental when they see a large 40, but if you have a small one, it's like, oh, it's so cute. But next slide, please. And then while at CCA, I also became a part of a collective, or co-founder in a collective named 5 Fits. We kind of got the name from the 3 Fits rule, or the 3 Fits compromise, which was stating that Black people were worth 3/5 of a person, and they could use them for voting purposes. But we're kind of just thinking about how we're full people, and 5 Fits comes from that. But in school, we started doing a lot of shows that we curated based on things that we were thinking about individually and collectively. And it started off as just like a blog space that we would compile our ideas and talk about things. But then we started doing actual shows in this place in our school called the Trapezoid. But after we graduated, we kind of got a lot of residencies and opportunities to help further our artistic career. Next slide, please. Well, still in grad school, this was our series that I started to develop, and this is where the title of this lecture comes from. But the idea out the mud comes from hip hop culture. It's a statement meaning getting success from nothing or starting from the bottom, making it to the top, success ultimately. But I started thinking about the phrase, and then I thought about the cloth, mud cloth, which is literally made from mud, and the cotton, which is dyed, is also comes from the mud because it was grown as a plant. So I was just thinking about a lot of wordplay and language and the similarities between urban Black culture and African culture. And so with these works, I decided to kind of repair the rich fabric of Black culture. And so these works have, the patterned cloth looks like, or is mud cloth that I kind of did a lot of research on the motifs and kind of compiled my own story and recreated the cloth but in their style. So these cloths usually tell stories, and I figured paintings usually tell stories too. So there's a parallel between what both of them are doing, and not either one is more or less valuable than the other. But I feel like in current times, the cloths are seen as low art, and paintings on a gesso piece of fabric, it's still fabric, but that one is considered high art. But yeah, this idea and hip hop in general kind of just played a big part in my thinking when I was at CCA. Next slide, please. And this is the second series that I developed while in CCA. I was thinking again about hip hop and language, and this idea that the figurative language used in hip hop has a literal representation. And so I was thinking to start compiling these literal representations into different categories, and just like a Dutch or Flemish still life, the still lifes kind of had a coded language. So I feel like with hip hop, it's also a coded language. It has double meanings. For instance, I'll break down the one on the left, the top left. That painting is all about money. Bread is a representation of money. Chips is another figurative language or figurative representation of money within hip hop culture. Cheese, and then more popular, I guess, it's, well, being that hip hop started in America, American culture, American slang is also a part of my paintings, but bacon or bringing home the bacon, people understand that one as money too. But kind of thinking about ways to preserve the code and give a little bit of the code away was thoughts I was thinking about when I was creating this series. Next slide, please. And then finally, we got to my thesis show. And I guess I just included these works to show how I eventually moved from mud cloth and started to work with, I think the project will be to work with all of the West African countries' cloths and kind of tell the story from all the lenses rather than just Mali's, because slaves came from all of West Africa, not just one place. So the left one is from Cameroon, and it's called Indap cloth, and they dye it with indigo. And the one on the right is called Benin cloth, and it's from Benin. And they use a lot of motifs and applique cutouts that they put on to their cloths. And yeah, I just filled the fabric with an oil painting that I completed that I thought the story, or thought paralleled with the story that was being told in the cloths. Next slide, please. Yeah, these are more of the Benin cloths, but I guess newer ones. Next slide. And then these ones are also newer works from this language series. Well, this is also works that I had in my first solo show. I kind of developed the idea of, well, while I was at since I'm at the Headlands, it was an old military base. So, or it's an old military base. So thinking about that, and when I started this, there was like this idea, there was a lot of school shootings and mass shootings going on. So just thinking about like guns within our culture right now, and guns used are the figurative representation for guns used within hip hop culture, and decided to make this language series about that. The one on the left with the iron and toaster is about, well, all of these are about weapons or guns to be specific. But the iron is a word that came from the idea that guns are made of iron, so people start calling it iron, or packing iron, or packing heat is another word that people use. So thinking about, well, that's the title of this one. For the toaster is also another word used for gun, and then the banana is inside the toaster because a banana clip is an extension that goes into a gun. So just thinking about the wordplay that is used within rap culture and combining it with current times and current thoughts. Yeah. Next slide, please. All right. Well, that was basically the length of my, what do you call it, webinar, but I was gonna start reading a little bit from my thesis that I did at CCA. I feel like it informs a bit of like the work, and I also was thinking that it's a good representation of how I was thinking at the time. I decided to make a lyric book for my thesis. I made 25 pages of rhymed explanation of my work. And I'll read a few of them, or maybe like two. And then I also had a dictionary for this language part of my series. And I'll break down some of those words too in the back. But I'll start. It's hard to learn about our history, even if we Google. What are red bottoms? Kings walked in gold sandals. But that rip cut us off and we made our own rules. Took the past from us. Now the future is what we get to choose. Some sell drugs, some prostitute. Some make songs and some go to school. If I tried to explain, I know you would be confused. We got it out the mud and did what we had to do. Misunderstanding a language, you'll go through a lot of corrections. But the language we speak had tons of misconceptions. The old Southern Negro spirituals were the inception that made master only interpret it with one perception. Swing low, sweet chariot may not sound perplexing, but means taking the Underground Railroad in the northern direction. Hip hop took the parts and made the connections. You thought we meant real birds, but it's a deception. Hidden codes keep us free in this generation. Might represent things illegal, but look at our situation. Stolen from the motherland and put on a plantation. We risked the Underground Railroad and the churches were the station. All right, and I'm about to check out these are the glossary for you guys. Let's see some cool. A biscuit is a gun. Bones are money, or it can mean domino. Bread is money. Butter is money. Cake means money, or it can mean a nice butt. Let's see. Cream, money. Cheese, money. I'm leaving a lot out because some are just too crazy. Floss means to stunt or flaunt material goods. Gravy means good. A noodle is a head, like your head. Ice is jewelry. And a whip is a car. All right, yeah. That's about it for my thesis. But yeah, pretty much I feel like going to CCA and being a recent grad from a grad program, I feel like there was a lot of opportunities that just unraveled themselves from being persistent. And I'm just so thankful, especially for this opportunity to speak to you guys.
Thank you so much, Troy. Do you want to take some questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for, the combination of the prepared talk and then the reading of the thesis creates this really poetic and very performative space too. I think, we're in this new space where we're suddenly kind of intimately in each other's lives, right? We're right up with you.
Yeah.
Having having you read a little bit to us is great too. I'm unfortunately just realizing that we don't see our attendees. And I'm sorry about that, you guys. I didn't mean to just leave you as faceless names, but if anyone has a question, I believe you are supposed to raise your hand and then we can unmute you and let you ask that. So give everybody a second. You can also ask your question. I saw there's already a few in our Q&A. Awesome. So maybe I'll just read those out to you first. So the first question was, what was the name of the Benin cloth that you mentioned?
Oh, the Benin cloth is called Benin cloth.
All right. And then John Contreras had a question. He wrote, dope presentation. What do you think about mumble rap, specifically its representation within rap? Would you ever add that as a representation of your painting sculpture? Have you ever thought somehow representing Rachel Dolezal within your work to talk about identity? That is a very interesting multi-layered question. Thank you, John.
Yeah, I have. I don't dislike mumble rap. I like it, actually. I think it's just a part of growing rap. Rap has a bunch of different genres within it. So I think that it's more about vibes versus the best and most quality lyrics. And I think as far as using them in my work, that's a funny idea. I guess thinking about it now, my current language is like more clear cut. I feel like when it comes to mumble rap, it's a stylistic choice, and versus other like backpack rappers, that's a stylistic choice. But I think if I was to maybe abstract the language series, that could be like a mumble rap version of it, But I haven't thought about that yet. But that's a good, it's a good little idea. But and no, I honestly have not thought about the representation of Rachel Dolezal in my work, and mostly because my work isn't too much about like her situation or that situation, but it is an interesting topic that is always good to discuss with people.
Awesome. We have another question here from Anna, and she says, what are you working on at the moment? Have you started a new series?
Oh yeah, actually, currently I'm working on a series that is about an incident that happened in my undergrad when I was graduating, but I'll leave that at that. But then it's about grills and grills within hip hop culture, grills within the history of the world, and grills within my personal history. And I guess that's a little preview that you can see, but yeah, been working on teeth stuff.
All right, do we have other questions? Anybody want to ask theirs live? You can also feel free to type them in. I'll ask a question in the meantime while people are thinking. I find it really fascinating that you chose to use kind of early modern Northern Renaissance style, or the idea of it, the use of the still life as a method through which to explore hip hop and Black culture in general. There's so many kind of hidden meanings within early modern still lives in general, right? The way that they talk about things like the concept of vanitas, or vanity, right? So all the things that you have here on earth are things that ultimately will lead to your demise. And I think there's this very interesting aspect that you bring in of, you know, the combination of danger, but also beauty. Or even kind of some of the other distinctions as you were talking, I was writing some of them down, the aspects of, you know, something that's big in real life, when made very small, is seen as cute, is seen in a different way. I guess the question is, what drew you to that kind of early modern idea? And is that something that you feel like you're going to keep working with, or are you looking at art history specifically, or was that just something that kind of came out of nowhere?
I think it was me analyzing words and language, and like, being that I listen to hip hop like literally every day of my life, I kind of like see the double language that is going on. And I feel like once I learned about Vanita's paintings, I was like, this is exactly what hip hop is doing. It's just being poetic with words and representation. And I was just like so surprised that it hadn't been done already. I was like, wow, I have to do this. I think I answered your question.
Yeah, I think it's just very successful. You know, there's the element of, if you know a little bit more about Vanitas, there's so much more there to explore, but that's also exactly what you're commenting on about Black culture, right? There's what's on the surface of the painting, and then there's all these other layers that are accessible to you based on what you know. So that it's just, I find that so fascinating. But we have 3 other questions, so let me stop talking and read these. First of all, has the pandemic affected your art practice, either your day-to-day habits or how you think about your work?
Well, currently, thankfully, I've had to work on a lot of these pieces right here, because I have a show in summer, hopefully. And it has affected my ability to work, because my studio closed at the Headlands, and it was kind of a scramble to get everything I needed. And before, well, it was just a lot of anxiety in my head, because I just thought I couldn't go anywhere, but because I didn't have my studio. But I was able to get my work from the Headlands and continue working on these paintings. But when I wasn't able to, it affected me in ways that I had to start thinking of other things I was going to do artistically. Like, I started back doing animation stuff, and I started messing around on Procreate, kind of just exploring all the things I couldn't do because I was painting so much, and like kind of just seeing what I can do with when times like these happen. Because this is not like this is only a first time, but I feel like there's a lot of time where I don't get to paint, and I'm always like, what do I do? And like knowing that I can go start a video, or like having these other ideas that I don't consider just sketches, or just playing around with, actually like taking them serious and yeah, furthering those.
Thank you. I think that's an experience that, you know, a lot of our students, our staff, our faculty have also had. We, from one day to the next, right, we all had this transition of whatever space you were used to working in, whatever project you were on had to stop. So I'm glad that you kind of let us in a little bit on what you were doing. Next question is, are there other artists that you admire or feel that you're continuing in the legacy of in the history of painting?
Oh, wow. Dang, that is tough. I don't want to like compare myself, but I would say, well, I'll start with the first. There's a lot of Black artists that I like right now that are just my main like focus, because I start following them on Instagram and see all their stuff and all their talks. But I would say Lauren Hasley, and then Kehinde Wiley, of course. Let's see. Names are slipping my head, but Titus Kafar. Yeah, there's so many, like, I guess Black art is what I've really been focused on. Like, they're most of my inspiration, because they're what kind of introduced me to the art world. I didn't really know about it before I saw Black art, really.
Is there anyone here in the Bay Area that you never want to miss a show of?
Oh, that's hard.
I'm sorry, you can think about that when we have another question in the meantime. Tiffany Wilson says, I'm enjoying your presentation. Being that the diaspora of Africa does represent and include Latin American countries, have you done any work that includes Spanish language art or artists?
No, I haven't yet, but I feel like I wanted to like collaborate with other painters or textile people who are doing like work within the diaspora, because I feel like there is more exploration of language with slaves that were moved over there too. So I feel like it's something that I need to explore, because I know that most of the slaves did not even come to America. So, yeah.
All right. Next question. Can you elaborate more on your painting process? Are your compositions painted from references or observations? And where can we see your work in person sometime in the future, whenever we're able to do that again?
Out of quarantine. When it comes to like still lifes, I usually just generally, if it comes to like bread, I know what a piece of bread looks like, but so when it comes to like making the label for the bread, I usually like look at a picture or something like that. But I typically sketch it out within like a 2-minute kind of deal, and then just to figure out placement, and then draw it straight onto or paint it straight onto the canvas. But it's kind of more like me trying to control the eye and make sure it doesn't leave unsatisfied. So yeah, just putting things in the right spaces in the sketch and then filling them in, but not really working from real life. I feel like that would be hard, because some of these items I'm trying to depict would not work. For instance, like pig for police representation. I don't. I probably can't find a pig that I can paint from. And even if I did, they wouldn't sit still, you know? But yeah, mostly from images or my imagination of what the thing kind of looks like.
And where will we be able to see your work in the future?
Oh,
Do you have anything coming up?
yeah, well, hopefully. I'll be having a show in LA at Parker Gallery in the summer, but yeah, if things go well, and maybe a show in fall, show in fall, and then a show next fall also, but more dates and details to come.
All right. Do we have any more questions? You guys can either type them into our Q&A, or you can also raise your hand and you can talk directly. No one's tried that option yet, but it's a possibility.
Oh yeah, and I feel like there was a second part of your question that I forgot to answer.
Oh, there's a raised hand as well. So let me now John can talk.
How do I do it?
Oh, no, he's unmuted.
Hello?
John, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hey man, thank you for coming by. I really love your presentation and just the type of work that you're producing. I was typing this up because I was like, oh man, I gotta ask him some more questions because I forgot to get a studio visit from you. But I did hit your Instagram up and I did message you from there, so hopefully we can connect with that. So I was gonna ask just about the whole I understand that. Anyway, so my question I was typing was it was when speaking on Black art, how do you feel about that art historical representation? And meaning from that, I'm meaning like the labeling of it, like how some artists were against the idea of labeling their art that way, and some kind of really embraced it. And of course, this is like a question like about representation and about appropriation, and just like in those modes, you know what I'm saying? Because when I see my artwork, I love the similarity. Like you had a picture of yourself in an apple. I got a picture of myself in the banana costume. But it's like, I'm digging these similarities with us right now, and I'm kind of just wondering because I'm Mexican American. Of course, like I grew up listening to like a whole bunch of hip hop and rap music, and so I sometimes add little bits, you know what I mean, into my artwork. And so I'm wondering kind of like how you feel about that, like that labeling, because I honestly feel like shit, we're living, history every day type of deal, you know what I'm saying? Being black and brown, like, you know what I'm saying? And being at this high level of learning and of course art, So I'm wondering your perspective.
Well, it's kind of like how I look at rap. There's like compartments, I guess, or like you can be a Black artist or a POC artist and also still be an American artist, because they're both a part of you. It's not like one is outweighing the other. If you're a fire artist, you're a fire artist, period. But like I think it's just if you're, pinning. Well, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I think that was that kind of answering your question.
No, for sure. I just, I love gaining like perspective, and that was a really good answer on it. Because I feel, I mean, another question I got. Hold on, my fault. Because I'm over here thinking.
No, you're good.
So like I recall. Do you ever have those moments as an artist, where like you're kind of like you're making something, you're just making this a lot of body of work, and then boom, like you create something, you're like, that's it, I love this, right? And then out of nowhere, like it gets used, not used, but like, I don't know how to really foretell this, but there's almost as if you are kind of foretelling things, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm speaking very mystical right now, but like this, like, I did this one piece called Under One Sun, and I was like, okay, for sure, like that's my work. And then like a week later, J. Cole came out with this whole album, and the first song out there was Under One Sun, or like Under the Sun. I was like, yes, I'm on the right track. You ever feel that way, like when you listen to music and just like on day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I feel like, well, being a part of a culture, you start to have collective thinking. And I feel like, especially with hip hop, there's a lot of ideas put into our world, and we all get to like experience it together. And then like the talks that we have after listening to the music, and then things that are going on in society kind of like add it all up. And then wait, I forgot the
No,
ending.
you get it. You
But
get it.
I think like I explained it somewhat well.
No, for sure. You're good, man. You're good. Again, I love the work, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any other hands, questions? Type in. Trying to scan, make sure that we're not missing anybody. All right. Well, thank you so much, Troy, for your presentation. Thank you for your very poetic reading, for answering all our questions, and also for being with us here at this very kind of unprecedented time and space. I think now more than ever, we need conversations about art. We need conversations about social justice. We need to continue the work that we're all doing. So I'm really excited to have been joined by our students, some of our staff, some faculty, a really diverse group that unfortunately you didn't get to see in person. Troy has graciously also allowed us to record this webinar. We'll be placing it on our website as well, so it'll circulate more at SJSU and more people will see that as well, which is awesome. So thank you so much. If there's not any last questions, I'll let you have any last thoughts that you may have, and then we can end this.
Well, I'll just end it with saying thank you guys again for having me. And yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't be there. That would be so much cooler. I like to vibe with the actual audience. But yeah, thanks again.
All right, thanks to Troy, and thank you to everybody who came today, and also thanks to Cynthia, who, while being muted and you can't see her, organized all of this as she usually does, as many of you know. So thanks to everybody, and hopefully we'll see you guys soon. We'll let you know as soon as we have another one of these lectures scheduled.